What's going on, everybody? It's Los here. We back on the throne of positivity, where the first is last and the last is first. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell so you don't miss out on these upcoming videos. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and then comment down below. We are getting ready to do our Q&A video on the next video. I'm really ready for that. We got several questions gathered up. So there's no limits. Just put whatever you want and we'll address those things to help you out with whatever it is that you're going through and whatever curiosity you may have. Thank you to everybody who has been supporting the ministry. I truly appreciate it, for real, guys. This is a full-time ministry. You make this possible, and without you, we wouldn't be able to do this ministry to the degree that we are able to. We are growing little by little, and God is good. So thank you again for your blessing, and I pray that God blesses you abundantly for your sacrifice. Okay, so this time we ain't gonna forget to hit the red button, you know what I'm saying? I forgot to activate the channel on the recorder, because if you can have it on without recording. So golly, if this happens again, I'm just gonna be done. I quit. Nah, let me stop. We over here on vacation mode. I'm about litted, you know. I wish it I'm on a beach somewhere sipping some pina coladas with my boat egg, you know. It's so beautiful over here in San Diego, man. But I need to be somewhere tropical, you know. Like, I wish I could I wish I could be on a beach somewhere. It's beautiful. That's one thing I miss about Florida. Cali don't got no beaches like Florida. I just got to say that. You go over here to this water, it's freezing cold. This sun hits different. Like, there's no humidity, which feels awesome, except for when you on the beach and you frying like an egg on the concrete. You know, but when you're in Florida, it feels so much better because that moisture is hitting your skin and you at the beach. It feels good. The water is actually a good temperature. Man, I need my bobo. We need to be in that beach, you heard? So today I want to talk about some very interesting things in regard to generalized tips for you seeking a partner and maintaining that. I'm going to leave it a little bit more free flow in this conversation, but what I have been trying to do with these videos is encourage you to see marriage as the ultimate institution in creation. And the reason why that is because God has created us in his image. Man and woman, he created them, male and female, as the total picture of who God is. And he wants to reflect that in the world. Where Jesus is the perfect image of God, we are created in the image of God. So we have the opportunity through marriage to demonstrate not only the image of God, and when I say to demonstrate the image of God, we're not talking about, okay, when I look in the mirror, that's what God looks like. When we say the image of God, the Hebrew concept is the total image of God, the way God behaves, his righteousness, his justice, like who he is not what he looks like. So that's something that we need to have in our perspective, is that when we say that we are the image of God, we're not talking about black, white, brown, none of that. We're not talking about, you know, do I got a big old nose? I know I got a big nose. Don't you dare judge me, okay? My whole young life, you know, everybody always used to make fun of me as a kid because I got big lips and a big nose. Don't you dare judge me, okay? But we're not talking about that. You know, God ain't up in the sky with a big old nose. You know, that's not what it is. Even though, fun fact, when the Bible says that God is slow to anger, the Hebrew word indicates that God has a very long nose. And I know that sounds interesting, but, you know, in the Hebrew culture, the bigger your nose, they thought like there was some type of association with patience there. So that's a fun fact. So I'm a very patient person, as you can see. But anyways, so we're tasked with going out into the world, being fruitful and multiplying that image of God. We are literally procreating so that we can expand the kingdom of God and the reach of the Lord throughout all the earth. Now, the reason why I think this is so important is because I truly believe that as Christians, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's our purpose, what is our mission, what is the vision of God. We have no clue because we've reduced the message of God to your salvation. Okay, well, once you're saved, then what? Right? Like, if everything is about salvation, then we get to where we are, where people just go to church just to be there to check something off. And then, all right, once I'm out of church, I guess I'll live the life the way that I want. And there's no purpose. Everybody's walking around the same mountain aimlessly. And we don't know what we're doing because we have no vision, no mission, no purpose. So all these videos that I have been creating is to have that in mind. Your mission, vision, and purpose in life is simply this: be fruitful and multiply. Bear the image of God to creation. Now, that actually looks less complicated than what you think it is, and there's no pressure on your life. Because another thing that happens in Christianity is everybody's like desperate to know, what is my purpose? What is my calling, right? And it's like, your purpose in life, your calling in life is to be the best man and woman that you can be in respect to reflecting the image of God, maintaining a personal and intimate relationship with the Lord. You do that to the best of your ability. And if you are called to the single track, then that you extend that all the way to the end of your life. Then with individuals, men and women who are destined for marriage, and that's something that you desire, which people often ask, like, how do I know if I'm called to singleness? I don't think that God is going to call somebody who has the desire for marriage to a life of singleness. I think that's something that contradicts God's own vision. God is not going to place a desire in your heart for no capacity to fulfill it. And Jesus is your husband is not the answer to that, right? Like, so that's a way that I like to answer that question. So men and women who are called to marriage, because that's how I said called, right? Singleness is a calling, and then marriage is also another calling, because marriage is your ministry, beloved. Being a pastor, being an evangelist, being a teacher, preacher, whatever you think is your calling, that's like second and third, that's like third or even fourth on the list, because your calling is to be in right relationship with God. That's your first calling. The moment you take breath, that's your purpose in life above everything else. And then after that is to be a man and woman of God after his heart. And then after that is to be a husband and a wife. That's your calling. And then from there is to be a parent. And then after the home, then we get into the church. But we kind of been backwards. It's like, oh, I'm a pastor before anything else. I'm an evangelist before anything else. Ministry comes before all things. It's like that just shows how lost we truly are, and we don't understand the plan of God and what's laid out for us in scripture. We've made the church everything and leaders to be everything, and it's like, no, that's not the way this works. You need to have that right relationship with God. Be the individual God created you to be, then the spouse that God created you to be, then a parent, and then your, let's say, vocation in the kingdom of God. If we could look at it like that, it clears up all this confusion. And, people want to know what this is. They put this all the way important. Like, what am I going to be? And it's like, beloved, work out the most important part of your life, because if this part of your life is tainted, there's no way you can deal with this. If you do this to a low quality, this has no significance at all. That's why when Paul talks to Timothy and he's giving him instructions for the leaders of Ephesus and the church of the Ephesians, what does he say? If a man cannot manage his household, he has no business being a leader. And the unfortunate thing is that people will sacrifice their family on the altar of ministry on the basis of expanding the gospel. So this person has 3 divorces, but look at all they did for the kingdom of God. It's like, so you destroyed a family so that you could bless? How can you bless through destruction? That makes no sense. So if you see things like that, it's the wrong thing to do. Like, it makes no sense, because again, your family is your ministry. And even more importantly, The family is the gospel lived out. It's incarnate. And even deeper than that, on the most reductionist level, the gospel is your marriage. Now, I know that's a lot of things to say, but I just have to clear these things in our head because our society lacks strong men and supportive women. It really does. We don't have strong men because of the way that society has been going. We've talked about this many times. We don't need to go through that. And then the devil has confused women to think that they're strong and independent. I believe you. You strong. You independent. I ain't trying to say that. I try to take no food out your mouth. Okay, but listen, if you think that's all your identity is and you can't submit to a man, if you won't submit to a man, you can't even submit to Christ, because the order is found in Ephesians 5. Christ is the head of the husband is the head of the wife. Plain and simple. And that's what it is. If I can get you to truly understand that God's plan is to maintain order, to maintain family, to maintain authority, to maintain the gospel of Christ preserved as it being acted out. It's one thing to preach a thing, it's another thing to walk it out. That's why it's so powerful that when those two things are coupled, like, you know, that pastor that's up there, he's not just preaching, but he has a family that's successful. He has a strong marriage and he's faithful and all these things. His children are successful in the Lord, doing great things for God. Like, you know that there's some type of alignment there that gives weight to his words, because words alone are empty. So hopefully I'm making a coherent argument of why this is so important and why I'm spending so much time here. Because if we don't have any significance in marriage or courting and taking our time in these things, then they just don't matter. And that's why we are where we are today. So I'm looking to inspire a fire in the hearts of people who are going to say, listen, I'm just going to live my life as a living sacrifice unto Christ. And you know, we're willing to do that. I've said this many times. We're willing to do that all the way up until the time of choosing a spouse. Unfortunately, why not sacrifice in that way so that God can give you what it is that he has for you, so that you can know, okay, now I'm walking into the most difficult but most rewarding thing in life with a guarantee that is the seal of God's approval. And you know, I've told you guys many times before, I don't believe in divorce. I really do not believe in it. I've been studying. I always am studying. You just got to keep improving your knowledge, right? And the thing that I've most recently been getting into is attachment styles. There's like secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and then there's like one more, like a reclusive attachment, like whatever, right? Like the goal is to be secure and everything. And this therapist, what he said is about divorce is one of the most powerful things that I have ever heard in regard to it. He said that the divorce of your parents is worse than experiencing the death of your parents. Now, I know that's a very strong statement, but I believe it's true. And I'm only speaking from ignorance. I don't have that experience. So if you do, then with all respect to you. The reason why the divorce is worse than death itself is because with death, it's buried. You can come to closure with that. But when it comes to divorce, it's dying and decrepit to its last day. You experience death twice. Well, you experience death 3 times. You experience the death of your identity, the death of your family and your parents' union, and then the death of the rest of your life until finally you reach the grave. And obviously you can heal, obviously you can get over that, but it's so detrimental, man. And this is why for me, it's so important for me. These are just my standards. I've told God, you know, whatever woman that you have for me, Lord, I just want to make sure, Lord, I know you could do whatever you want, Father. I just hope she's never been married. She better not have had no boyfriend. Nah, let me stop. I'm just kidding. That's OD. That's extreme. Come on now. I just hope she's single. She's never been married. That she doesn't have kids. That's something that's important to me because I want to do this fresh with a clean slate and God take control and build up from ground zero. Now, this is, and I'm not going to get into this too specifically. Remember, my mom is a single mother with kids, so I say that with all due respect. But for me personally, I want to have the foundation set. There is hope for you if you have, you're a single parent and all of that. I'm not going to get into that. Just with all due respect, I say that these are my standards. And I think that's important because we are able to have that barrier. When you're able to contain things by the hedge of protection, like in the book of Job, it allows for the greatest flourishing that can exist. So, in regard to finding somebody, I want to read from John chapter 10. I was reading John this morning, and like as Jesus is talking about being the good shepherd and stuff, and then the story of Lazarus, it just, I feel like it's such a good model for how to deal with either pursuing somebody or seeking the one that God has for you. And just give some general advice to men and women. Again, I always talk about like some of the most important things that my wife has taught me. All right, I got it on my journal here. Let's start there and then we'll go into the John thing. For men, I think it's important for you to be gentle, to be patient, to take time with your approach towards this woman. And something that I think is very important, I've told you guys before, the more distance you can create between you and your potential partner, the more space you give God to work and leave it in his hands. And eventually you'll see how he'll close the gap for you. And what I think is so important about creating this space, right, without going about it your own way, is that it allows you to focus on the nonverbal communication. And I think that's so crucial because we need to recognize what marriage is. It's a partnership. There's a goal, there's a ministry. We're fulfilling our purpose together. And we need to understand each other, and communication is the most important thing that you have to develop. And through the prayer with God, I always tell you guys, I really try to have that mathematical equation, 1 plus X equals 2, and devise kind of understanding and concepts of my wife through that situation. And one of the things that I've developed with that is a prayer language, right? There's a language that you and your spouse, or you and this future person, have to develop. And if there's distance between you and there's a whole bunch of space, you guys can learn how to communicate without communicating. And I think that's so beautiful, because if you can develop that unique partnership communication that you could just look at your spouse and everything that they talking about without even a word being said, or you can hear something in their voice and something's up, or anything that you looking at them, the twitch of her eyebrow, okay, I got it. I could tell like what she got on her mind. Does she like that? Does she not like that? All right, how can I improve my character? Whatever it is, like if you create distance and you spend more time in nonverbal communication, it's gonna build up more and more and more, and you guys will be able to know each other in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, because there's so many aspects of relationship that I think we just kind of convolute everything and we make an amalgamation of all the subtle and important things of communication. There's nonverbal, there's body language, there's verbal, there's tone of voice, physical, there's touch, there's, holding hands, kissing, all these things like physical, you know what I mean? All the way at the end after marriage, that's communication. But we put all of those things and we throw them in the pot, and then it's like, we just learn all of that as like, I don't know why I thought about this, but when I was a kid, I used to take the Starburst, and I wouldn't eat them all at once. What I would do is I would unwrap like 10 of them, and I will put them and mash them together like a little ball. And I will put it in the fridge for it to cool off, and then I will come back and I'll eat it. And I feel like that's what we do with all the communication is we take all the flavors and we put it in a single ball, and then we just eat it. And then all of a sudden it's just, yeah, it's sweet, but it tastes like bad chemicals all up in your mouth, you know? And it's like we want to savor each and every aspect of our communication because it's going to make it that much more powerful. So I think it's important to, again, take your time in your approach. Learn those cues from your partner. What do they do? Why do they say certain things? What are their idiosyncratic behavior? Because again, the more you could develop these things, the more intimate you can become. And then as God brings you closer and closer, just take your time. Be patient. You won't be rebuked by God for your patience. And you're going to learn more and more about people, and the more time you allow, the more time God gives you and you to develop your character separately. Because I'm so glad that God didn't allow me to just do whatever. And I was like gung ho. I feel like I was on level 1000 when I first came to California before that, right? Like, but over time in California, God has just been making me patient. Just like, yo, just chill. If my promise is my promise, it's not going anywhere. It's certain to happen, but it's not about the destination. It's about what are we doing now in this very moment. Let's work on that character of yours. It's a little bit too strong. You come off very intimidating. And I noticed that, like, I have bravado. Like, I'm the type of person, like, when I walk in a room, like, I want to be made known, not for pride or any type of situation like that, but I want to scope the landscape. I want to know who's who, who's where, and just make myself known so that I can know everybody, because there's nothing greater than being loved. So I want to be loved by everybody, and I want to love everybody. But oftentimes that comes off a little too strong. I'll be standing up straight and I don't be slouching, and I have a loud voice. And coming to California, having that against the Californian relaxed, laid back culture, specifically even Mexican culture, is so different than what I'm used to. I'm so loud. I throw myself on top of people and just like all over the place. And it's like they showed me how it's like, yo, you just gotta chill a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, just come down a few notches. And when you do that, God is working on your character. Like, okay, that I need help with. I'm impatient. Work with my attitude. Work with the way I say things. Truth should never be given at the sacrifice of kindness or mercy or whatever. Because I'm the type of person that's like, yo, facts don't care about your feelings. You heard Ben Shapiro. Like, the facts don't care about your feelings, but you don't give truth in expense of people, right? Like, you don't sacrifice people on the altar of truth. Truth liberates people, as Jesus himself even says. So with all of that, you're learning the language of your person. And as you guys are developing, God is just making you better and better for that other person. So when you finally come together, you now have a fully developed language, like a real language that you guys can communicate. Because I think this is one of the greatest things that destroys marriages is people don't know how to communicate. And I've really learned how to communicate, again, from God, my personal relationship with God. And then, again, that mathematical equation with my wife in my dreams and in my heart is like, okay, I need to learn how to communicate. I need to learn how to know what is it that she's going through. What does she need? And be willing to sacrifice myself for the sake of that, so that we can learn how to communicate in every way, right? If we learn how to communicate, if we can identify what the problem is, we can create a solution. And this is another area I want to go into, is if we are able to figure out what is the problem, we can come up with the solution. I know that sounds crazy, but oftentimes we're dealing with the symptoms, but we're not dealing with the disease. And if I can recognize from the outset with my wife, Mami, we are not enemies. We will never be enemies. If we get into a conflict, Ma, let's do our best to communicate effectively and clearly. Let's not play games. Let's not, I did 10 things good this week and you're still not getting it. Just communicate. We just need to communicate and verbally communicate. We can't assume what the other person knows because there's just things we all have blind spots to. So the greatest thing that we can learn to do is to communicate and just call it out for what it is. Like, hey, I feel like you didn't hug me this week. I want a hug. Can you hug me more? Can you hold my hand with the street? You know what I'm saying? Or kiss me, or, tell me you love me in the morning, or whatever it is. Like, let's communicate what we need and not be like, oh, well, I washed the dishes 10 times this week and he didn't tell me thank you. Therefore, now I'm going to be bitter and then this way. Or I'm going to say, I'm missing all this love and this touch and whatever, then therefore I'm gonna be bitter with her and I'm gonna give her an attitude. It's like, nah, we all are gonna fail. We're gonna fail each other. If we could just communicate, look, this is what I saw. Let's not take it personal, because we just need to understand each other. How do you love? How do you receive love? How do I love and how do I receive love? How do we understand that? And then how can we create a beautiful combination of those things? Because that's going to serve us. Because what the devil's going to try to do is make us focus on the dumb things that are happening and then set us up against each other. But we are never enemies. So that should be enough for like the communication aspect and like why it's important to develop that not only before marriage, during the courting, and then after the marriage. The reason why I think it's so important to prolong this, let's go back to before marriage, to prolong either the nonverbal communication or the courting stage, and then, shotgun to the wedding. Let's meet at the altar, boo. Is you have to leave everything in God's hands. But when I say that, what does that actually mean? Jesus, let me read this briefly of what's happening here. And I want you to think about this in regard to the woman being the sheep and the man being the shepherd, because that's really the image that Paul gives us in Ephesians, that the man is the pastor over his wife. John chapter 10, verse 1. Jesus says, truly, truly, I tell you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. Pause right there. We're always talking about the counterfeit, right? Like the counterfeit individual that you thought was the person that God had for you, but then, later on you find out that they were not the one that God wanted for you. I think this gives us a very strong base of how to determine that, because he's saying, obviously, if that person didn't work out, they were the ones that entered by a different door. They walked in by climbing over the wall. That man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the way that a sheep pen looks, the imagery that you should have, I'll try to put up a picture or an image or a video or something. There's this pen, right? There's a pen that there's like pasture. Think of it like a mini park, like a little backyard. And there's grass, there's trees for the shade, there's water or whatever food. And then they build this entire wall that's high enough to keep predators out and the sheep in. And it's by stone or clay or whatever they choose. But there's this single entry or two entries that's big enough for the sheep to get through. And what the shepherd actually does is the shepherd sleeps at the entrance of the pen. So if you can see this in regard to relationship and trying to pursue the one that God has for you, men are the pursuers, women are the receivers. They need to be pursued. The woman is the sheep that is being protected by the gatekeeper, that is the shepherd. Jesus and God is the gatekeeper to get to the prize, the woman, the reward. Ladies, you need to let God be God. Leave it in God's hands. You even got to be so confident in God that even in the pursuit, you resist the man to the point of death, in the sense that you're going to even let the situation die, if not multiple times. The more times you let the situation get out of hand, out of control, I'm not saying you know what I'm talking about. Like, we don't got to get wild with this, okay? Leave it in God's hands. Resist the man as much as possible. Resist him, deny him, because whoever's the pursuer, if he's truly the man that that God has for you, God is not going to let that man give up. He's not. It doesn't matter what happens, what he comes up against. He won't fear anything because the fear of the Lord is in that man's heart. So you need to deny him. You need to close off all access to you, and I told you guys I'm not with the game. So I don't know how else to say it, but play the game. Don't play games. So play the game in the sense that you do have to create the pursuit and the chase. And, why do we love playing tag as kids so much? It's exhilarating, right? So the same is true between a man and a woman. The woman is responsible for creating the resistance. What I learned from women is that women, before the marriage, has all the power. She determines what it is, and her word is law. There is no challenging what she says. What she says is what it is. And if that man won't respect you, then, beloved, that's not the man for you. What you say, if you say no and he don't respect no, then he got to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? You got to put as much distance between you and that man and just really control the situation, because you do control the situation. However, if you believe this is the man that God has for you, you need to give him some crumbs every now and then. And always seeking the Lord. Lord, when do I give crumbs? When do I give a real big piece of bread? Like, when do I really entertain this man? And what I'm saying by that is, like, glance at him, give him that little eye contact. And obviously you want to entice the man a little bit. I'm not talking about seduction, but you want to entice him to know, okay, I am denying you. I'm not playing games. A woman teaches a man how to love her, because what you accept from that man, he's going to accept as law. So the way that you say that, okay, we could deal with, you could deceive me, you could lie to me, you could do this, you could do that, you could do whatever you want. That man is going to take that and say, okay, this is the expectation she has for me. This is what she accepts of me. This is what's okay. A woman teaches a man how to respect and love her. So don't play no games. Again, keep that distance. Also give him a little play, hey, I am interested, but don't cross that line. You still got to go through my father. You're not getting in the sheep's pen, you got to go through the shepherd. If you want to blow some kisses, like I tease him, like, you ain't getting up in here, you're not coming in the sheep's pen, do that. Cool. It's going to be like, oh my God, this woman really want me. But I'm so confused because then she always denying me. I don't get it. That confusion in his mind is going to be like, man, the situation is this, but God is telling me this, and I'm being confirmed by her there. Then it's like, okay, we got it. So if you let Jesus be the gatekeeper, the man has to figure it out with God. And if any man comes through any other way, he's not the one. He has to come through the gate, and God is going to help him. He's going to help him how? Because the Bible says here, we continue verse 3, the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. What's interesting about folds of sheep is there's usually more than one shepherd. And there's the great shepherd. Jesus is the good shepherd, right? But you have to recognize, as the woman, the sheep know the voice of God. And if the man is who he truly is, the one that the Lord has for you, then surely his voice will sound familiar, because he will do what he sees his father doing. The same thing that Jesus always said about his father. I don't have my own will, but I do the will of the Father. I don't have my own voice. I have the voice of the Father. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Why? Because the man has to reflect all that Christ is. If you see the face of God in him, you hear the voice of the Lord in him, then you're going to know that that's that man. And hindsight is 2020. So you could look backwards, and although you were deceived in the beginning, there were a lot of red flags that you overlooked. Why? Because you didn't create distance. You didn't deny. You didn't create boundaries, and you didn't set down the law. You got to be honest. And that wasn't the voice of the Father. That was that man's voice. Now we continue. Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, But the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and find pasture. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. If this man is the man for you, he will die to himself for you. He will die to himself for you. And how will you know that this man is willing to die to himself for you if you're not willing to create the environment for him to die? You have to provide him the cross. You have to provide him the nails and the hammer. Here you go. Prove your worth, because a man has to prove himself. Like, he has to be proven. This is why God tests the righteous, is to prove us. So that man has to replicate every aspect of Christ. So I'm not going to go all the way into John chapter 11, which is the story of Lazarus, but I already basically mentioned the gist of what I was saying with regard to let the situation die. And that takes a lot of strength to do. But think about Mary. Mary received the Messiah in her womb. She raised God, like literally. She raised him, but she had to know eventually that a true mother doesn't hover over her child to impede him of his destiny, nor does she let him live freely to become spoiled and do whatever he wants. So, to some sense, the mother has to recognize that she is sacrificing her child to not only God, but to the world. And she has to, in some sense, allow the suffering that takes place on the cross, metaphorically within regard to raising children, right? But if we're talking about that in regard to Mary as an archetype, then we have to recognize that in a different setting. Let's say Mary, you being Mary in the sense of you allowing this man, hey, I'm not going to hover over you to make this easy for you, but I'm not going to liberate you to like absolve you from your responsibility to die on the cross. That man has to die to himself. So you need to provide the situations and the scenarios to just be like, no, I reject you. Like, because rejection is the beauty of all things. Like, a man is a pursuer. He knows what he wants, and rejection and denial is not going to stop him from getting there. Now, let's not get into the bad situations. We let's keep this holy. Let's keep this righteous. I'm not referring to that. We're talking about the one, not the other ones. So, that's not going to stop him. You need to deny him to his face. But again, it's like, I know it's not playing games. It's just you're setting the law. And then from a distance, you just confirm to him, hey, I do want to be pursued, but you're not just going to have me however you want me. Like, you need to grow as a man. And, the most beautiful thing that I think that my wife helped me realize, again in prayer, is that she didn't accept me for who I was, because who I was not sufficient. Because of the man that she saw was greater in her sight. She saw in me a man greater than where I was, and I was too willing to settle in the present moment. So you need to be able to see in that man, okay, he's coming to me like this, but I see this man up here. And until he elevates himself with the Lord, then I'm not willing to. Like, he needs to go through God to get through me. That's basically what I'm saying. The situation with Lazarus is, if God truly has the power of the grave, he is the life, the resurrection. He is who he is. So he can bring to life what dies. And if you let it die for the glory of God, right? Because Jesus tells Mary, and Martha, this was for the glory of God. And he even let it extend to the fourth day. Now, that's always strange to hear if you don't understand the Jewish culture. Jews believe that there was a possibility that the soul still lingered in the air for 3 days, and there was a possibility of resurrection. But they believed in what was called corruption. So after the third day, once it completed the third day, it was like, there's no coming back from this. So Jesus let it die to the point of impossibility so that he could be glorified. That's the point. So you need to do the same in yourself. Is like, yeah, I need to create this distance so that this could die and only God can resurrect it, and let it happen multiple times. Then if God keeps resurrecting the thing that is dead, if this thing won't die, that's probably a good indication that God is doing the impossible in your life, and you continue to let him do his thing. And like I've mentioned before, if you leave it in God's hands, little by little, he'll let you develop that character, develop that language personally, so you can know how to communicate, and then learn how to, okay, I could let down my guard. I can show my true self. You know what I'm saying? I could let that little girl out. I could let that little boy out. So, and I know I'm talking a lot from the perspective of a woman. Fellas, all you got to do is see what I'm referring to here. You don't give up. You look for the signs that she's giving you. I know that a lot of men think women are confusing. They're really not. You just got to know who women are. And I'm just going to say this, like growing up with women, bro, women are just dudes in girls' bodies because, and I know that sounds so stupid, but I swear, bro, hey, listen, I don't care. Yo, those girls don't poop rainbows and they don't fart roses, okay? Like those girls, they girls and they girls. They not how you think they are. They're not as intimidating as you are. Like, yo, what I've seen from my sisters, I'm like, yo, y'all just be in girls' bodies. Like, you know, so don't be intimidated by them. Like, they just as goofy and lame and corny and just whatever. They are who they are. Don't like, you know, and then don't get intimidated, bro. Like, be confident at all times. Be yourself. You should never have to betray yourself, your authentic self, to impress nobody. If she's not willing to accept you for your goofy little self, then maybe she's not the one. Like, why would I want to be in a situation where I have to put up a front all the time? Like, how beautiful is it that I could be as authentic as I possibly can, and she could be her little authentic self, you know? And then we come together to be authentic, unauthentic, with trust as the barrier, the hedge of protection, to let that flourish to infinity. This is why, you know, not to go in that direction, I won't explain it too much. This is why infidelity is such a great offense. Infidelity and then flirting as well. It's such an offense because what you're doing is now, bro, once you cross that line, all things can be forgiven and all things can be overcome. But do we really want that? You really want to break the barriers of protection, because once you let it in, that's over with forever. That will always be something to think about. There's just certain things you don't want to know, right? Like, you just, ignorance really is bliss. There's just certain things that you don't want to know about. It's better that you don't know, because you can't unknow something you know. And knowing that this person did this to you is like, that's forever. You gonna, man. So that's why, like, yo, loyalty, I'm loyal to my wife even from now. I'm doing that from now, from years before I meet her, because when I walk that out, like, that barrier of trust is the ultimate conduit, catalyst for intimacy. You don't want to destroy that. You want to have the freedom, right? Like, the man has to be the safety for his wife, but the woman has to be the safe place and the refuge for the man. Like, the woman has to be able to receive the man in her arms, and the man has to be able to embrace his woman. She needs to feel protected, and he needs to be able to feel vulnerable. So hopefully this stuff is interesting, you guys. And the last few things that I wrote, like things my wife taught me, is we can overcome anything together. Anything. Like, literally, I'm truly convinced with everything I've gone through with God in prayer, I really believe her and I can overcome anything. And if we could do this without knowing each other, without being able to talk to each other, imagine, like, what this just shows us, there's no problem we can't overcome. And then imagine, like, once we are face to face, we know each other, we're lovers, and we can communicate, we can call things out. We just got to be patient and wait on God, and we'll resolve anything. We're not enemies. We never do anything to hurt each other intentionally. Time, forgiveness, and devotion truly solves all things. It really does. And then, ladies, you, by being as resistant as possible, by making your price literally invaluable, priceless, you teach that man what is his value. Because not only are you rising your cost, you rising his cost by association. Because he's going to say, I need to become a better man. Like, that's what I recognized about myself. I was forced to become a better man. Like, she taught me. Like, I had an idea and I was walking it out, but she brought that to 10,000 levels beyond what I could ever do. So anyways, guys, it's Friday. It's March 29th. It's 11:09. Hey, I got to tell you guys that because it's like my journal signature, right? Let me sign my name on that. Hopefully you on the beach somewhere sipping some pina coladas. You know what I mean? What is it? It's spring break. It's spring break for me, but hopefully you guys have spring break or break from your job or sipping pina coladas. Virgin, you heard? Anyways, guys, hopefully this video was helpful to you. Don't forget to put your questions down below, guys. I want to have as many questions to entertain as possible for the next video. But y'all know what it is. It's Los here. Always, I got to sign out by telling my boo, I love you, boo. I love you, boo. I can't wait till we go and eat some fried fish on the beach somewhere. I don't know, DR or something. We go out and just enjoy, man. So hopefully we meet soon until we meet again. But anyways, guys, y'all know what it is. It's Los here. We all the throw the positivity. Nobody shout the throw us. We out. Peace.